to It's Okay to Be Gay, the podcast.
Wait.
Well,
are we just going to start? I don't know.
Start what?
Hold on. Oh my God.
Start what? The podcast?
Yeah.
Are we starting the podcast right now, David?
Are we on?
Are we on? Is this thing
recording?
On? Oh.
Are we here?
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Hey, I can. So, David, I don't know if I told you, I did purchase that microphone. So hopefully the audio next time we're on is going to sound a little improved.
Very cool. I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
That'd be fun. So, wait, was that the intro or should we start now?
Sure. I think it would be great, honestly. Wait, is this thing on?
Are we recording?
Are we on live?
Are we on? Hello? Are you listening?
Hello? Hello?
Welcome to the It's Okay to Be Gay podcast. We're so glad that you are joining us again, hopefully again, and this is not the first time. But if it is the first time, believe you me, you are going to enjoy your time here because we have an amazing guest joining us very shortly on our show, a good friend of mine from back in the day. So super stoked that he's able to be here. Veronica, how are you doing?
I am doing pretty darn good. How are you, Mr. David?
I'm good. It was a productive weekend. I think I got a lot of stuff done. We got a little rain today, so that was nice. And yeah, life is good.
It's good. I was totally not productive this weekend, but that's okay.
Oh, that's okay. I took the production side of things on me.
Right out from under me.
That's
fine.
okay.
That's
so
fine.
next
Take it.
weekend, you can do your
Sounds
productivity.
Good. I'll save it for next
There
weekend.
you go. That would be fantastic. So our guest today is one of my good friends from my time in seminary, which, just a small backstory, we might tap on this again, but I was in seminary for the Diocese of Dallas for 2 years. Had a great time there. And this is a young man that I met while I was in seminary and very influential in motivating me to actually create this podcast.
Excellent. Can't wait to meet him. Can I just say seminary sounds so much semen. Like seminary. Like there has to be like what is the background of seminary, because it sounds so much like seminary. It looks like seminary.
A little bit. Dictionary. Webster's dictionary.
All I can think of is seminal fluid when you say it.
An environment in which something originates and from which it is propagated. Quote unquote, Merriam-Webster dictionary. You're welcome.
Wow.
The etymology, it is from Middle English, from seabed, nursery, from the Latin seminarium, from semen, or from semen, seed. Something that in which something originates. Is
that where they got it for seminary school?
Yeah, exactly. It is. People are created from semen, from
It's
seed.
legit named after jizz.
It is. Wow. There you go. Now you know.
Holy shit. All right.
So let's just dive right in, folks. So glad you're tuning in to the It's Okay to Be Gay podcast. This is Veronica Witt.
And this is Mr. David Van Ettenwitt.
Thank you, Veronica. And our guest this week is one of my great friends who I met when I was in seminary. And Spencer and I have kept in touch a little bit over the last many years, and I'm so grateful that you are able to join us. So welcome to the It's Okay to Be Gay podcast, Spencer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. This is really special what y'all are doing, so I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, I initially reached out to Spencer because he runs a podcast of his own with some of his friends when I was trying to brainstorm and actually unwrap like how to manage a podcast or how to create a podcast or what to do. So Spencer was actually very influential in guiding me through like, hey, here's what we use and here's how we do that and everything else. So I really appreciate you, first of all, as a person in general, but also the time and energies that you spent with me chatting about this whole concept and guiding me towards where we are right now, which is incredible. So thank you for being that resource for me when I needed
Definitely.
somebody. So.
I would have been no help, so I appreciate your help, Spencer.
Happy to help. Yeah, I'm glad it's working a little bit. So that's cool.
Yeah, we are well into things, and I'm very excited to be able to continue to have so many incredible people on our show. So thanks for carving out some time today to share a little bit about yourself and your story with our listeners. And so that's where I wanted to jump right in with just letting you have an opportunity to talk a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and where you're from and how you grew up. So enlighten us to yourself and just give us some details, man.
For sure. I was the oldest of 5 siblings, and we grew up in Houston, Texas. So yeah, we grew up real Catholic, so I noticed one of your questions was like, who would you look up to? So I looked up to a lot of priests, a lot of clergy. I remember one time a bishop was like, "Hey, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And I was like, "I want to be the Pope." So like, this was me at like 8 years old.
It could still happen.
It's still time.
Shoot for the stars. Like shoot for the Vatican, man. Shoot for the Vatican.
That's what the goal is, Yeah,
you could pull your name out of the hat. Like, who knows?
Oh yeah. The rules. Let me tell you, the rules will change if I get up to the top. It's going to be a little different.
So funny.
So yeah, man, that was and then going to private school with my siblings and stuff.
How were your parents? Were your parents? I mean, everyone's on a spectrum, right? Of how I mean, some people are very outspoken about kind of their non-acceptance of certain people, whereas some people are just much more, well, that's just who they are, and we just accept people for what they, how were your parents? Or were they outwardly one way or the other, or kind of not? Sometimes it's also hard to tell, I feel like, too.
Yeah, it is hard to tell sometimes with them. When I was really young, I was caught watching porn, right? Like, and like, I remember I went to my dad and said, "Dad, I was only looking at the girls," right? Like, and he was like, "That's because," yeah, it was, well, and my dad goes, "Well, that's because you're ordered correctly, so that just to give you all a sense of kind of, I mean, yes, they love gay people. Like, I know my parents, they respect, they appreciate love, but they do see it still, as a sin, as disorderly. Okay. So, I mean, and growing up, I did feel straight, growing up as a kid, I didn't really, I always thought men were beautiful and stuff. I never really, but it wasn't like I really felt something more than just that kind of general attraction. Right. Like, and as far as eroticism was concerned, it was girls at that age, from a young age.
So you grew up very Catholic and very conservative, Catholic. It sounds like.
Oh yeah.
And so we've heard a couple different people who have come from super ultra conservative backgrounds, and their upbringing and their parents were always like just real respectful of anybody who or their backgrounds were from. And then some people were like, no, yeah, my mom always talked about like gay people like they were the devil, so it kind of goes both ways. So I think that's where Veronica was trying to figure out, like, were your parents more like, hey, everybody's just who they are, or was it?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think they just kind of blew that question off in general.
Sure.
It only came up in those kind of moments,
Yeah.
They never really talked about it, but we had no exposure to gay people. I mean, we were all in Catholic private school. I mean, they had no, I think if it had come up, they would have certainly blushed, been very uncomfortable around gay people, very, they would have tried to tell us, hey, these people, they're poor sinners, they don't understand that what they're doing is wrong and it's unnatural, that kind of stuff. That would have been said if it had been anything we were exposed to. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And so it sounds like you kind of grew up where there like was that mindset that there was something intrinsically wrong with being gay. It wasn't the normal 100%. Thing. It wasn't okay to be gay.
Yeah,
sounds like a great idea for a podcast. Let's run with that.
This is why this podcast exists, because so many people think that way.
Exactly. All right, so very interesting. So it's
Yeah.
grade school, all into through Catholic school down in the Houston area, and initially your mindset was that you were wired correctly.
I was wired, you know. I mean, not to say I didn't find, like, I don't even know. Maybe I was gayer back then too, and I just, you know, I didn't know what it was or something,
Right.
or it's possible. I mean, just from the memory I have right now, I just remember that wasn't really on my mind. Like and possibly because of exposure to different things. I mean, and sometimes I even think about in terms of career, like I wonder if I had been exposed to actors and comedians, would the priesthood have still been the number one interest for me at the time? I don't know. So
I feel like the exposure thing is kind of a common thread that we're hearing. You know, there's a lot of people who, on top of being in the conservative, you know, environment in growing up, on top of that, you know, small schools and small towns that there probably were no people, or maybe one person that you knew who was gay. So it wasn't you weren't exposed to it. You didn't.
And it's crazy. I mean, we were in this big, massive 4 million people city of Houston, and we lived as if we were in a small town. You know, I saw the same people, went to church with the same people, just the same. I mean, and yes, my parents did a great job of taking us on vacation and stuff, and we'd go out and do fun stuff. But we were real sheltered as far as what, you know, the TV and the music and different things. So, to this day, people ask me, "Oh, you grew up in the '90s? Do you know this song or that, you know, show?" Or I'm like, "No, I didn't watch The Simpsons. Didn't, you know?" Luckily, I got my hands on Harry Potter. You know, they weren't that crazy where I couldn't do that. But
perfect.
Oh, those are great memories.
Harry Potter, Dungeons and Dragons, all those were things that were in some households were outlawed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it wasn't that far off the spectrum.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, so it wasn't crazy like we hate gay people. It wasn't like it was just a general discomfort, I would say.
Sure.
Yeah.
Which totally makes sense. And so then into your like adolescent and maybe later teen, maybe early like college days, what were you doing? Where did you go from Catholic grade school to after?
I had a lot of exposure to the Legionaries of Christ, a religious order. So when I moved to Tulsa, Oklahoma, I was in 8th grade, I believe. Yeah, we finished out in 8th grade in Houston, and then we homeschooled for a little bit up in Tulsa, but then I was really tired of being at home. I was really not getting along. This is my memory, I mean, of that time. Like my memory now could be way off for all I know.
Sure.
I just remember like hating family life, and the Legion was a way out. It was a boarding school up in New Hampshire, right? With a bunch of guys. And they were praying really hard. They were playing really hard. It was so enticing to me, that lifestyle. And we would be in community and just be having fun all the time. That was my vision of it going into it. And so my parents in 9th grade, they let me, in I think it was 2005. Yeah, they let me go out to New Hampshire to start school for 9th grade. So my high school years were all there. And then college, you know, I guess that's college. 2008, I graduated high school. And then, we went to Connecticut for novitiate. So it's not really college. You get a couple college credits with languages and stuff, but most of novitiate, with the 2 years of novitiate, were like Latin, Greek, learning the constitutions of the religious order.
All
so
serious stuff.
Yeah, a lot of silence, a lot of prayer, a lot.
Okay.
Some of the worst years. Those 2 years were the worst years of my entire life, hands down.
Why?
Novitiate. Many reasons. You could have 3 phone calls home per year.
Ooh, per
so
year?
I was per year. So
holy cats.
So I was missing my family like crazy. The rules were, so high school was pretty fun. The rules were kind of, you know, they were there, but they weren't so oppressive. Like I could call my family once a week. I was still very homesick but I was a high school kid. I mean, and so that was difficult, but then in novitiate, it just went really high, you know? So you're not really forming relationships in novitiate because you're literally quiet most of the day. There's about 2 15-minute breaks and maybe a lunch or a dinner where you can talk to people. and the rest of the day you're in like pretty much absolute silence. Studying and praying and stuff. Yeah. Oh, it was bad. Oh my God.
Like, I last a week.
Oh yeah.
A week? Try like
and
2 days.
My first therapist, when I got out of that, he was like, that lifestyle is so far outside of who you are as a person. Like, I'm surprised how you made it through. So
wow. And how long? It was 3 years.
2 years. 2 years into this shit. Yeah, wow. I was miserable, like tired all the time because we were waking up at 5 a.m. and going to bed at like 10 every night. So you're not getting a lot of sleep at a college age. And just the consistency of it. Every day was exactly the same. Even the fun activities were scheduled in advance. There was no spontaneity.
Right.
So there was an ex-military guy that was in there and he's like, this is harder than the Army because at least in the Army, we had real breaks during the day. This is just nonstop. So I did that. And on top of all of that, I fell in love with a fellow seminarian. There was another, he was just a beautiful person. Those 15-minute breaks, I was always trying to talk to him and like spend time with him. And, I just I told my spiritual director, so I guess that's my coming out, but it felt more like get help, like help me not feel this way anymore because this is wrong. This is and I think it's interesting to think about what I felt, but I think if he had said it's normal, it would have been a very different experience. But for the first 2 years, he was told just pray about it, it'll go away. That was the guidance I received. It didn't. And I remember crying myself to sleep thinking there was something wrong with me because I had never felt these kind of feelings before. I thought like, this is not natural, even though, it felt amazing. Like talking to him felt so incredible and beautiful. And,
when did you kind of, when did you realize you were kind of in love with this person? And was it early on in the,
I think it was a gradual, well, not in high school. In high school, I just thought he was cool. Like I didn't, because we were in high school together, but novitiate, I don't know, something clicked, I guess. And I just started seeing him differently. I don't remember it ever feeling sexual. It might've been something, but it could have been sexual. And I just never opened myself up to that part of myself, but I definitely felt this, like, I want to spend all my time with him. I want to, I would love to hold his hand even, or I just want his company,
That's exactly how love feels.
Yeah.
It is a beautiful want to be with that person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was, it was a beautiful, beautiful thing, but it just felt wrong for those couple of years. So I was in hell, those 2 years really sucked.
So after you were done, I guess, with the Legionaries of Christ, I know you didn't come to the seminary that I was at as a legionary. You were with the Diocese of Tulsa at that time. So what was that transition like for you, leaving the Legionaries and still pursuing a religious life, just within a different group? I just want to give like a 2-second kind of clarification for the people who might not be so familiar with Catholic.
Good idea.
The priesthood or the seminary, or like, what is this?
What is he talking about?
Exactly.
I have no idea.
So this is like the 30-second version of this. So in the Catholic Church, our pastors, our leaders of our parishes are ordained priests, single men who have committed themselves to living their life in service of the Catholic Church. And to become a priest in any major city, there is what's called the diocese, like the Diocese of Dallas, the Diocese of Philadelphia, the Diocese of Madison, whatever. And within those dioceses, there are different churches, and those churches are led by their priests. So people who live in certain cities and certain areas who want to become a priest and who want to serve the church in that capacity have to go through anywhere from 6 to 9 years of formation until they are able to be ordained and work in their church. And so in the diocesan setting, in the city setting, that is how that structure looks. Also within the church, there's dozens and dozens of different religious orders and religious groups. Probably one of the best known ones are the Jesuits, maybe the Franciscans. People might have heard of the Benedictines. Each of those religious orders, organizations have their own kind of niche. Some of them focus on public speaking, some of them focus on education, some of them focus on healthcare. And so depending on what order you're part of, they also have their brothers, their monks, their priests, their abbots, their bishops, or whatever. And so the Legionaries of Christ is an order within the Catholic Church. And then where Spencer and I met were in diocesan seminary. So both he and I were in seminary to be a priest at a normal run-of-the-mill church that you'd find in the middle of your whatever city.
Right.
So you left the order of the Legionaries of Christ and moved into the diocesan formation system with the Diocese of Tulsa, Oklahoma. So just to catch everybody up, we're all on the same page now. Continue. If you still have questions, Google is your friend. Okay.
Oh,
anyway,
yeah, for sure.
Spencer, go on.
Oh, no, yeah. The transition was interesting. So, like, I remember I had my first home visit after I professed temporary vows with the Legion. Like, after novitiate, I went through that. And my first home visit, my parents brought me to this monk. He was a Benedictine. And he sat me down and we just talked, and he said, "Hey, so are you okay?" And I told him all my struggles, I think I told him even about the other seminarian I was in love with, blah, blah, blah. Mm-hmm. And he said, "You don't have to go back, right?" And I was like, that was the first time I'd even considered that.
Just thought like
that was even an option.
I thought
no, I was so brainwashed, I guess, that I thought, no, to follow God and be a good person. And, I got to go back. I have to keep suffering. This is the path to happiness, or to heaven, at least,
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up not going back and got dispensed from those vows and got in touch. I still wanted to be a priest, though, like you said, and I still felt like I still want to help people. I still want to, do something inspiring or whatever. So I got in touch with the Bishop of Tulsa, and I think he was really cool. He recognized, like, okay, this guy's had, like, since high school, he's had no exposure to, like, the real world. So UD was he agreed to let me go to, because there was another option. There was Conception Seminary up in Kansas where it's just men, it's just a typical seminary. He's like, okay, you need something like more like real college. So that was the beauty of going to UD. And honestly, at UD, I learned more swearing, more inappropriate humor than I've ever heard since or before. So, I mean, like, if people say, like, it was night and day as far as seminaries go. I mean, I had a cell phone. I could call my family anytime. It was, and I remember, like, asking permission from, like, whoever was in charge to do things like I used to in the religious order. Like, you don't have to do any of that here. Like, I mean, just go. And it was fun. I actually really enjoyed the seminary
independence.
Life. It was pretty laid back.
Independence, yeah. It was really
there was a lot.
I was playing video games too much, but it was fun.
There was a lot we had to do. Like, you got to be up at 6 o'clock to go to daily mass or whatever, and then you got to attend classes, and you have to go to your classes. But outside of that, and then dinner, and then night prayer, or evening prayer. But outside of that, like, all of your time is your own, and do with it as you please. I spent a lot of it napping.
Yeah, me too. I was kind of depressed in that time because I was
2 naps a day. Yeah. It was great.
I think I was very confused during that year. I wish I could go back and relive it now, because I think I would have enjoyed it more. I think I was still in a place of, like, something feels off, but of course, how would it feel? How would it not feel off? Yeah, it's like,
that was new to you.
It's like,
right.
And funny enough, at that time, during that 1 year I was in seminary, I fell in love with a girl. She was in my class, and she had a boyfriend, I think, but in a different school. Like, he was in a different school. So she would take walks with me holding hands, like, throughout the campus and stuff. And, like,
I remember that, Spencer.
Do you? You saw this?
No, I heard about it from somebody, and I might have been one of your other classes and brothers. But I remember, like, you spending so much time. You're like
so much time. So much time with her. Yeah.
Ladies man,
Oh, yeah.
And it was just very interesting. And of course, like, anybody who thinks that, like, so if you go to a Catholic university and you throw in a bucket of, like, 20 seminarians into a room, every woman on campus is just immediately attracted to those seminarians and not even the cute ones, like
and
whatever.
I think the women see
so
somebody who's like, I've always wondered what's this attraction to seminarians that a lot of women experience. I think it's like,
go ahead. No, you go.
My opinion is they see someone willing to commit to something with their whole hearts, and they're like, that's like, oh, I'd love a man to commit to me like that. Maybe that's my theory.
That is
we have
probably
Veronica
100%
here. Yeah, she's like,
correct. That is literally the brass ring, all what you want. So of course, yeah. Why wouldn't you look at that? Like, damn, that guy commits like no one's business.
Right.
God, I wish.
It was really funny to see like all the like freshman and sophomore girls fawning over the freshman and sophomore, and even some of the junior seminarians or whatever. Me as a pre-theologian, I was in my mid-20s when I was in seminary, and so none of the freshman sophomore girls were interested in me, of course, because I was too old for them. But yeah, it was.
You don't
really
know
funny.
that. You don't know that.
I was just gonna say, David.
I doubt it. Some
David.
girls love older men, so
that's probably true. But I never heard of them, so it's fine. I never heard of them, so it's fine. But whatever case was. But no, it's really funny because they're just so interested in these guys who are on their like way to being single forever and becoming a priest, and all these girls are like, ooh la la. It's just it was really funny.
It's that like, I can't have it. I want it now.
Yeah, I think there is a small part of that too, though, that the seminarians, for the most part, are probably going to continue on with formation and, go graduate and whatever else, and maybe at some point fall out of seminary. But for the most part, for those girls, it's like they're safe, they're safe friends. Yeah. They're not looking for somebody to, be committed with, and those younger college girls can like share themselves with those people and not have to worry about it becoming a thing. And there's like no drama. So I don't know. But
I think
it sounds like it could be a challenge for me too. Challenge accepted.
Like, let's see. Can we get here? That's funny. But no, Spencer, I remember knowing that you were like ladies' man and had girls who liked you, this one particular, whatever else. And then when you were getting ready to leave seminary, you weren't leaving seminary, you were finishing that year, but you were moving on, you weren't coming back after the year. And I remember your dad came up and was there for a little while, and it was, I guess, maybe towards the end of the semester, and you guys were kind of shopping around for schools and, deciding where for you to go next. And I was in the computer lab and with you guys, you and your dad were there, and there's some other people milling around, I'm sure. And I remember seeing there was like a pad of paper that you guys had like written all these notes down and everything else. And I wasn't like reading it, but it was there. I looked and I saw it was there, and I went on my merry little way. And one of the things I noticed was like under clubs and organizations, like LGBTQ, like was on the, and I was like, what? I was like, why would Spencer and his dad be looking at universities and then like have it like LGBTQ like as one of the things that they were? I was like, oh, is Spencer gay?
It makes me wonder if my dad didn't know what that meant.
Interesting.
Yeah, honestly,
I don't know.
Like
that is so interesting.
I remember seeing it, so I know it was there. And maybe it wasn't something that you knew or thought about. Maybe it was your writing and you put it down there accidentally. I don't know, but I remember seeing that there, and then thinking to myself, like, no, Spencer's like borderline has a girlfriend. I was like,
borderline has.
That's hilarious.
It was pretty interesting.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
Can I go back?
I don't remember that at all, by the way.
Oh, that's even funnier.
It's ingrained in my mind. Like I remember vividly, like your dad, you, the notepad. I don't remember anything else on there.
In the dining room.
I'm pretty sure it was like on the also like you had written the University of Oklahoma as a potential option. I was like, yeah, that was my undergrad. Like you should definitely check that out. And then I noticed like LGBT like club, and I was just like, what? It was very confusing.
That is so funny.
But, yeah, and then I was like, oh, that makes sense. He's always like hair like polished, always super sharply dressed. I was
always.
Like, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It wasn't at the time judgmental. I was like, oh, good for him. Like,
I could see that. Yeah.
Anyway.
So can we go back to maybe like So you felt the feelings for the man you did when you were there, but when did you maybe start feeling that you had? Was that the first time you noticed that you kind of had an attraction to men, or you felt something for men, or was it before that?
I mean, I think I've always found men pretty. I remember, like, I would draw Jesus a lot, like his face. I remember as a kid, I would draw his face a lot, you know. So, but it was never anything I considered as like more than just like a wow, he's beautiful. Like never, it was never like oh, this is someone I, you know, desire, like, you know, in a different kind of way, like a romantic way. So I think with that seminarian was the first time I felt that desire on top of the attraction, you know? So it was another level that I just hadn't experienced before.
Yeah. So otherwise pretty, like you said, pretty straightly wired.
Yeah. Pretty straight up till then. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So walk us through kind of what happened next. Where was hey, I think I'm actually maybe part of the LGBTQ community. Like, what does this look like? Why haven't I wondered about this? Or, like, obviously you had the love feeling for that person, but I don't, so.
100%. Yeah. Seeing that girl and everything at University of Dallas was like, okay, it almost made me think, oh, that time in college, I was just into that seminarian, that time in novitiate, I was just into him because there weren't girls around. I almost kind of had that theory in the back of my head at that point. And then I go to college at St. Gregory's, and there's this really attractive baseball player, and I kind of had some of the same feelings again. And I mean, I was just way too shy to really kind of explore any of that, you know, so. Sure. I continued being a ladies' man throughout St. Gregory's. But yeah, then it kind of became like I think I need to explore men more like this is something. So then, you know, I'm a youth pastor. I lose my virginity at some point in there to some girl. It was like a one-night stand. She was older. She helped me understand the ways of how that works. Very,
this is where this
very
goes.
Nice. Yeah. Like, this is, so, I mean, shout out to her for, you know.
There you go.
So then, you know, kind of, man, honestly, when I was a youth pastor, I was kicking a soccer ball around in my third year as a youth pastor. I was like, I feel like I want to explore men more. I feel like I think that maybe the Bible is maybe not 100% accurate. I literally left Catholicism. I was about to go back into seminary. I swear. Wow. I was literally in my third year as a youth pastor. I had already gone through 5 interviews. All I had to do was interview the bishop again. And and I called the vocations director after kicking the soccer ball. I was like, I think I'm not doing this. And also, like, I don't think I'm Catholic. So I had to go to my pastor as a youth pastor and be like, hey, I don't think I can keep being your youth pastor. I don't think I'm Catholic anymore. Yeah. Like, I don't feel like this is really my thing. So I start working, of course, in the corporate world, and I start exploring men more and more. And so I'm just gonna. You know, I feel like even to this day, I'm still kind of like, what am I, you know? So like I've explored men in many ways in the bedroom and so to speak, but I guess I've never tried dating a man. And I, you know, the experiences that I've had up till now with several encounters that have not been pleasant. And so it kind of makes me feel like, and you know, my therapist talk about this a lot. It's very possible that I fall deeply in love with men, but just don't like them in that, you know, in maybe an erotic way. It's possible. So, I mean, I'm still open-minded, and I consider myself a part of the community just because I'm still questioning and not fully like, oh, I don't really identify myself. I call myself pansexual because I know I have feelings for men and women. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Yeah, of course.
and yeah, I'm open to any man changing my feelings on, those other counters, you know.
So hit up Spencer, his
100%, you know, you got, yeah. Email me, you know, Instagram me. Yeah, I am a very open-minded person, and, you know,
taking applications now.
I
can vouch for Spencer. He's a great guy. Anybody would be lucky. Spencer.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Share themselves.
This is going to be on my Tinder bio. I'm just going to put a link to this now. Yeah.
Hey, just give him my number, okay? Personal and professional reference. Just go.
Well, I think this is an interesting thing to talk about. I don't talk about this a lot because it is. I don't know if people talk a lot about the confusingness of it coming off of the kind of background I've had, because, you know, because a lot of times you'll be exploring men sexually and you're thinking, and you might have discomfort or these different things. And it's hard to parse out, okay, what part of this is just, this isn't my thing versus the guilt. You know,
right.
What part of this is like shame? Because it's not natural. The scripts that you've been planted in your head.
20 years learning that this was wrong.
That this was wrong.
I'm doing it, and it feels so good, but in the back of my mind, like it's not okay.
Right. So, I think that is a very interesting thing to explore some more. And like I said, I'm still exploring that in therapy and stuff. And obviously, for me, being the intensive cultish, you know, world that I've been in in my formative years, you know, in my younger years, I think that plays a big factor into why this is still kind of like a, you know, more of a question than maybe for other people at my age, you know? So
for sure. I was just thinking about this earlier, actually, because we were talking to someone else, and I was realizing that like so few people like fall perfectly into one box or another. And I was talking to my friend who also had agreed to come on the podcast later. And I was like, well, where are you exactly in the color of things?
Right.
And the response was like, well, and I was like, you know, that's really not a fair question for a lot of people because there's so many variants that like come into play here. It's like, am I 100% gay? Like, yeah, I'm married to a man. But I was like, I still find certain women absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And there's that like little moment when I'm like, oh, you know, like, ooh, this is like, wow. Like, damn, like good thing I'm married because, but I mean, I
it's all a
think
spectrum,
that I'm bisexual, you know, by any means. But yeah, so like there's so many people feel certain degrees of like romantic attraction or erotic attraction, or just that need for like a person to be with, and that physical touch and physical bond and emotional like connection. And it's like, you know,
and you can't tell until you meet someone. You know, I could in the next week meet a woman that all of a sudden I don't know. I feel like it is.
Yeah. Veronica, it's okay to be gay.
Yeah, no,
that's
totally,
so
man.
That's so true.
You know, I feel like you don't know until you experience it, and it's not like most people go out thinking like, I'm going to test to see if I'm gay, right? You know, if you have an inkling in your brain that you've maybe had some sort of feeling or attraction that maybe you felt was more than just being like, hey, that's a beautiful woman. I mean, I kind of do the same thing, and I'll be like, gosh, she's gorgeous. But yet in my brain, there's no afterthought after that. And maybe I'm making an assumption here, but I assume that maybe what kind of spurs it on is that there is maybe like an ellipsis after that being like, but is there more, or a feeling like there's something more to that spurs you on to maybe explore more.
100%. Yeah, that is interesting. You say it like that, and I think, you know, I mean, I've been diagnosed. This is going to be probably oversharing, but whatever. I've been diagnosed with OCD, so I have obsessive compulsive disorder specifically about this issue, and also like my spirituality and stuff. I obsess a lot over the nature of the world, the nature of my sexuality, nature of the universe. You know, I'm always trying to answer impossible questions. That's kind of my curse. But also I think it's kind of what, in the positive sense, kind of what inspires me to keep being artistic and creative and stuff. But like, I feel like I had a point with this. To give you, maybe one day I'll be in the same space with this that I feel about my gender, because when I think about my gender, I feel very feminine, right? Like I'm very, very emotional, very neurotic in some ways, and I feel very feminine, you know, like, but never once has it
Like,
crossed
hey,
my
now.
mind like I'm going to transition to be a woman. Like,
Yeah.
I wish I had been born a woman. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
For some reasons,
Yeah.
not for others, but yeah. So it's like maybe one day I'll have this kind of peace of mind where I can be like, oh, you know, I have feelings for men and women, but I'm at peace with that now. And you know, I look forward to having a love life at some point. I mean, I've had, you know, relationships and stuff, but I haven't had anything that really. So, you know, I haven't been with somebody for a long period of time.
That's what I was going to ask. What about like even relationships with women? Have you had any sort of, not even long term, but, you know, longish relationship?
Yeah, I've had like, I think the tops was, I had like an on and off again thing for a couple of years back at back in Oklahoma, and then I got out of a 3-month, like 4-month thing. Kind of a sad ending, but that was probably the best one. I feel like with every relationship, I'm getting closer and closer to like this.
Me too,
this
buddy.
Is something positive, you know, for my life, not something that sucks the life out of me. You know what I mean? Like,
that is what we're all aiming for. Let me tell you.
I want to hear y'all's stories. I hope y'all have your own thing that you do like this, where you interview each other, because I want to hear your story so bad now.
Maybe sometime. No one wants to hear straight woman stories.
I do.
I think there's an audience out there.
I've already heard some of your story, and I'm like, I kind of want to hear more.
That's so funny. Spencer, earlier,
it's okay to be straight too, by the way.
That's right. However you were made, it's okay to be. Spencer, earlier when you were talking about, you know, you're recognizing your gender, like, you know, there's parts of you that seem very feminine and everything else, but like you have no doubt that you're a man.
I'm comfortable as a male.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the movie?
For now, who knows? Maybe in the future I'll be Spency. Maybe in 10 years, who knows? You know?
There you go. We'll have you back on, and you can be sure.
Perfect.
Have you ever seen the movie As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson?
I've heard of it, but I love Jack Nicholson. Now I have to see it.
Yeah, no, it's one of my favorite movies, and he's a writer in the movie, and so his character Melvin Udall is a very successful writer, but he's has his own like OCD and, you know, all his disorders that he is living with, and the movie is about how he ends up, you know, falling in love, which was never part of his character. As you watch it, you're like, this guy's an absolute nut. But he runs into a woman in his publisher's office during the movie, and the woman is like, I love your work so much, like, how do you write women so well? And he goes, well, I think of a man, and then I take away he goes, I think of a man, and then I take away reason and accountability. It's one of the best lines of any movie of all time. But yeah, sorry, Veronica. But when Spencer was talking about his like feminine qualities, being so in touch with his emotions and everything else, it just made me think of that. Well. Despite me being in the middle of a wonderful story about the movie As Good as It Gets, we did decide that this would be an excellent place to take a break and to end part 1 of Spencer's episode. The conversation continued on for a lot longer, and we were very excited to be able to turn this into a 2-part episode. So be sure to tune in next week when we hear the conclusion of Spencer's conversation and the rest of his journey. The conversation is very intriguing, and you don't want to miss it. So we look forward to seeing you next week on the It's Okay to Be Gay podcast. On behalf of Spencer, Veronica, and myself, we appreciate you tuning in and listening thus far. And we look forward to sharing the rest of his story with you guys next week. We'll see you then. Thanks so much.